Okay, so here's what goes into my Amber Biere De Garde. I've got 10.5 pounds of Pilsner, Dingman's Pilsner for my base malt, 2.75 pounds of Vienna, and a ½ pound each of Special Roast Malt, Cara Munich Malt, and Crystal Dark. Last but not least, 3 ounces of chocolate rye. For hopping, we have no 60-minute addition, so instead we're doing a 30-minute addition of Hallertau Mittelfrüh to about 28 IBUs, and then right at flame out we have 1 ounce of Saaz, 1¼ pounds of DIY candy syrup that I'll post a video up for on how I made it. We'll be fermenting it a little bit different this time. We'll be using a Kveik yeast. This is Lutra. We'll be building the water profile, since I use reverse osmosis water, to a amber balanced profile, and I will post up the levels on the screen now. Okay, I start this brew day the exact same way as I do every brew day, by making up reverse osmosis water via a 4-stage filtration system. I can produce about 3 gallons per hour, so I set this up in the morning and let it run until mid-afternoon, and that's when I grind my grains. I do single infusion, no sparge, and I found that to be the most time-saving method of brewing for me, and I've got a video as to why I do that. In the meantime, I fill up my hot liquor tank and recirculate water from the mash tun through the Herms coil to keep the temperature stable the entire time. I grab my little helper who grinds the grains for me, and she's wearing a mask because of how dusty the grains are when we grind them. We dough in here and begin the recirculating to keep it at 151 degrees is what we did this Biere De Garde at. Give it a good stir and start the recirculation. As I mentioned, I get about 75% efficiency with this method, but I save at least an hour by not having to fly sparge or run calculations for batch sparging. The benefit is to recirculating the entire time, which tends to be at least 2 hours, is that I get crystal clear wort, and once I make adjustments for pH, it doesn't go anywhere. I targeted about 5.4 pH because Kveik yeast tends to be a little bit acidifying, and it held it the entire time. I got about 5.39, 5.41 around the end of the mash. I bring the boil kettle up to a boil and put the lid on. I rely on my steam condenser to keep the garage nice and low in its humidity. I love this way of brewing. It's super clean, it's very quiet, and I don't have to mess with any external technology like vent fans and hoods and such. Here goes in the 30-minute Hallertau Mittelfrüh addition to 28 IBUs. And I follow that up at the 15-minute mark with 1.25 pounds of DIY candy syrup. I've got a video on that as well. A small amount of yeast nutrient, which tends to help the Kveik yeast. And then finally at flame out, 1 ounce of Saaz hops. I recirculate through the plate chiller for the last 15 minutes of the boil to sanitize it, and then continue the recirculation with water running through the plate chiller to chill it down. When I transfer to the fermenter, I hold it up nice and high to get some aeration going, and this one I cooled down to about 75 degrees, which it did in about 10 minutes time. Our original gravity came in at about 1070, which is about 4 points low, but that's okay, it's still within style guidelines. The yeast I'm using is just some slurry of Kveik Lutra that I had from my Schwarzbier. I didn't measure it, I just kind of eyeballed it because you can underpitch Kveik without really any negative consequences at this level, and I'm not really concerned about overpitching. So that's the brew day. Alright, here it is, grain to glass in about 14-15 days, somewhere around there. It's only been under pressure for about 48 hours at 30 psi. So it's still coming up to carbonation, but it looks pretty good. Good on the nose. I get toffee, caramel. It smells a little bit sweet. I really get an impression of the candy syrup that I made. That's got kind of a cherry, rum, brown sugar type smell to it. Biscuit, toffee, toastiness. Yeah. Smells just like the one that I fermented with yeast 1007 and took 3 or 4 months to bottle and come together. But this one is 2 weeks old, force carbonated. This has only been carbonating for 48 hours at 30 psi. I kegged it, I didn't bottle any of it. So I'm expecting it to get a little bit more spritzy as time goes on. I'm gonna keep it at the 30 psi until I hit that mark that I'm looking for. But overall, nice off-white head, kind of tan. still not perfectly clear, but in time it will be. I didn't use gelatin or anything like that. Let's see how it turned out. Really good. Just like a bowl of cherries, just really rummy, cherry, brown sugar. It's very clean. Up front, it's very rich, malty, gives the impression of intense sweetness. But then as soon as you sip and swallow the beer, it finishes dry and clean, remarkably clean. And it just makes you want another sip. Sweet up front, dry on the finish, not bitter, but tastes very, very similar to the one I fermented with the German ale yeast. I almost want to say sessionable, but it's got way more flavor than a sessionable beer. This beer fermented all the way down to 1007, and I'm sure that has to do with a large addition of candy syrup or DIY candy syrup. But yeah, just super clean. I could drink 3 of these. My body wouldn't like it, but my mouth would, yeah. Brew this beer. Brew this beer. This is very good. Without further ado, I'm gonna drink this and go brew this beer. Cheers.